Aloha, all you moneymakers out there. Today, we're excited to announce we have a great guest here today. Aram, I can't say it. Aram, how do you say your last name?
Amr
Amr, say your last name.
Samaha.
Samaha. And I have a hard name, so we have definitely two hard names. So,
Yeah.
Middle Eastern names are not the easiest sometimes, but
No, they're not.
um, he's a beast, guys, in luxury architectural, and he has a great background in real estate and just understanding real estate that I think really we were just talking about helped him grow. And of course, he has his great Tykes just came out, and his NFT, their projects. He's partnered with Ryan Pineda, and super excited to hear about that. But more interesting, we're going to talk about money and just how money flows and making money. And he loves talking about, I love talking about. So let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
Just before we get started, I'd love it if you guys could subscribe below, and that way we can reach more people and just help people make their money work for them in any different way we can. Thank you guys, and let's get started in today's content.
So, guys, you want to introduce yourself and you wanted to share what your background is? Yeah,
Absolutely.
where'd you grow up? And yeah, tell me a little bit more about
Yeah,
it.
I want to start off by thanking you, Indar, for having me on your show. I'm extremely humbled to be on your show. Um, all right, just give you a background about myself. My name is Amr Samaha. I'm the CEO and founder of Samaha Holdings, which owns four different companies that service real estate. We do everything from design all the way through to development, and everything sort of in between. And that really happened because I was trying to vertically integrate the different parts of real estate that I was trying to navigate, and I ended up with those four companies. And I obviously have my fifth company with Ryan Pineda, which I'm the co-founder of Tykes project with him. And that's an exciting new project in the Web3 space that is really focused around real estate investors and for real estate investors. So that's kind of my 2 cents. I'm also an architect by
You're being
training.
modest. You're being modest. His design is crazy. These are, I mean, you're talking like skyscraping buildings with these. I've seen some of these beautiful work. Like, I don't know how you come up with ideas. It's, very architectural, very modern, very, I'd say contemporary modern. I would say to feel, I'm sure you're working with
Yeah,
the clients directly, but you guys got to see the design work of this. We're not talking a little Manini kind of small little stuff there. These are just beautiful. And the building that he's in right now actually was one of the buildings that I seen renderings before he was even there doing that building. And I mean, it's crazy how you take that boring old building or structure and really turn it around. It's pretty amazing to say the least.
thank you, thank you. Yeah, we've been very fortunate, man. Like, I'm actually an immigrant, so like when I moved to the U.S., I didn't know anyone. Like, quite literally, I'm a transplant, so I didn't know anyone, didn't really have a community or surrounding that I could really like lean on. And I think that was one of the biggest hurdles that I had, more so than like all the technical things. It's more so like, who do you know? How can you navigate your relationships to be able to get to meet people, right? That could be your clients or your business partners. Everyone needs a place to start. So we've been very fortunate in the growth that we've had, but the reason for that growth, I think, is kind of the niche we were talking about earlier, which is understanding the value of design, right? And how to
Hmm.
generate value out of design. So unlike every other architectural practice, what we really focus on is design from a developer's perspective, right? Like, how does this add value to me? And if so, how much money is it going to cost me, and how is that going to change my bottom line, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and I think that's helped us grow significantly and have access to projects similar to the ones you're talking about, where it's a 20-story building that we're like renovating in a landmark location. Just being able to do work for that is truly humbling, and I personally never thought that I'd be able to get to it, but here we are, and I'm extremely excited to have done it and just experience the entire process.
Obviously, design is your passion, your love, but that's not the underlining thing is your brain.
No, no,
Yeah,
no. It's
yeah,
designed with ROI in mind, right? Like with
yeah,
efficiency in mind. Like, how do you add value to this?
yeah.
I could care less to just make a sculpture. Like, unless it's adding value, unless you're telling me if I add the sculpture in this place, is going to increase foot traffic.
More
so
foot traffic to see the
correct.
sculpture.
So therefore, it translates into more dollars. So it's more efficient. It's better for the economy. Absolutely, I'll add the sculpture, right? But absent that, we in our whole practice, we don't do anything unless it's generating revenue or efficiency or sustainability or something to the project.
Just sitting and listening to you say that, that's a niche that I don't think architects got to figure out. Like, they don't teach that in school, or they don't,
No,
it's just design and make pretty, but it's not what you almost should be taught in an architectural school, or in a design class.
You're absolutely right. So they teach design, in vacuum, right? Like, this is the way to best design, right? And you understand in vacuum and space what the best design will be, right? And then they teach you a bunch of other classes about like sustainability and cash flow management and stuff, but they never really make that connection for you, like how to use this stuff with the design aspect, so you'd be able to create something that generates a better product for the community.
When was it that you figured that out? I mean, because obviously you teach that in school. I mean, that's how you blew up, really.
Once I was done with school, I immediately realized that architecture isn't going to make me a whole lot of money. So I was like, forget this. It's just like, and I was an architectural engineer, right? Like, so, even if you make like six-figure later on in your career.
It's funny you say, I got an electrical engineering degree, and I did the same thing. Like, you make like 100 maybe. Like, okay.
Yeah, like you make good money, right? But like, you work so hard, and being an electrical engineer, right? Like, all the trenches you had to go to in school and getting like licensed and all that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of time. It's a lot of commitment. It's a lot of effort. And, I personally think, especially engineers are, extremely sharp. Like, if you could keep up with the BS of engineering, you have grit, right? So to go through all that just so that, like, it'd be like a six-figure sort of job. There must be something better out there, right? And I could see a lot of my friends and family friends and things like that. The really successful ones were in business. They weren't, they were engineers, but they were in business before they were engineers. So it made me really think about, like, okay, like I don't want to be just an architect. I want to do something with this skill set. And what I did is I started a couple of businesses servicing architecture to start off with. And then, they didn't do one of them didn't do too well, just kind of fizzled out. And the other one was doing really well. And then, just didn't have my legalities set up straight. So when things blew up, my business partner kind of like took a chunk out of it and like left me with nothing. So there were growth, the experiences.
The partnerships. Yeah.
And then the journey after that, I was like, okay, well, clearly, right, like, I was able to generate value and create these companies and make money, but there were certain things that I wasn't good at, right? Like, I obviously didn't cover my back as far as legalities went. I obviously didn't have the best financial tools at the time that I should have had, right? Going into business. So I sought those two things out, and the opportunity presented itself by getting a job offer out of nowhere from a family office. So, I got a job offer in New York from this family office because I had met the partner a couple of times.
But that's totally different than what you're doing. That's interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But that's what made it very attractive to me, because at the time it was striking on two pain points I had, right? All these people do is cut deals. They find, companies, cut a deal and sell that company at a higher valuation. And that part seemed to be the part where I was weak at, right? Like, I knew how to build the company itself, but I didn't know how to cut the deal before or after, right? So I could operate it, I could create revenue out of it, but then trying to pull that revenue out was clearly not a good idea because I hadn't structured it right to start off with, right?
So you started learning about EBITDA, and I think the weakness of every company is marketing. That's how you can build it.
Yeah. So I ended up taking the job and doing that for 3 years, and went from initially being somewhat of like an intern, right? Like, because I had to shadow a lot of people to understand a lot of things that I didn't know, right? Like, I didn't know about finance, and I was working on 59th and Park, so like in the heart of, like, finance, New York, right?
Yeah.
So shadowed a bunch of people for like the first, call it 2 months. And I was very lucky and privileged to shadow the mentors that I had. And then very quickly over the course of the next 3 years, I went from being there to like heading a 300 and a bit person company. Like the expansion, the growth of that in like the western part of the US, which brought me often to LA, right? Because I had to be in LA for business. And I realized I really love the weather here. It's a lot more like the weather back home. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to do New York anymore. There's so much more to this country than just New York.
Yeah.
And at the end of that 3-year tenor, I had learned a lot of the skills that I really needed. And then I basically went from that to unifying the two sort of passions I had, right? One for, finance and creating wealth for myself, and then the other of architecture, and then doing development. And that's how I started my journey in development in LA.
That's amazing. I never heard that side of your story. I mean, I knew you're great at architecture, but I didn't know the financing side of it all.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's. I have a lot of creativity. I feel within this mind of mine, and my best tool in expressing this creativity, the medium for me, is architecture and buildings and lived environments. I can't really tolerate art in its static form. I like it when it's dynamic, when it's alive, and so I'm a lot more into, for example, sculptures than I am in paintings and things like that. Even though they also are things you could interact with, but I think architecture is just a tool that I've used to monetize something that I think naturally comes to me, which is, to your point, design.
I mean, I love how you take a design and as we were talking earlier, you're utilizing design not just for the design aspect, but design to make money, to take a building and utilize the building where, yes, it's going to cost that owner, millions of dollars to do this design, but in return, this building now is going to have a higher income, lower expenses, and it's going to, honestly, maybe it costs 2, 3, 4, 5 million, whatever, to build it, but now this $50 million building is now evaluated at a $50 or $60 million evaluation. So even if it costs this much, the valuation of that building now is crazy. And now that building owner could actually refinance that out and actually even pay that
Correct.
pay all that off.
Correct. So that's really where we shine, right? So for this particular building, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but we basically looked at the building and said, okay, this building burns about $1 million a year in electrical and heating and cooling, right? Because it's a big black glass tower in LA. So what could we do to make this tower look like a hotel without, paying a bunch of money? And fundamentally, it was very clear to me that we needed to bring that bill down, right? That $1 million bill is egregious, $1 million a year in cooling and heating. If we could bring that down just by 50%, right? That's like $500,000 into 30 years, that's 15 million, right? So to that end, if you could deliver a design that would save $15 million by putting an umbrella over the building, right? Just as simple as that, right? Like if you put an umbrella over the building, you bring down the cost of operating that building by $50 million in 30 years, then you have that money to be able to leverage to make the building look better, right?
Yeah.
So that's fundamentally what we did. We're like, okay, well, this building needs a big ass umbrella. And that's what we ended up doing. We ended up doing these circular umbrellas that go between level to level that look very slick, that end up changing this building from looking like this black, big onyx glass behemoth to this big mushroom-looking umbrella building that looks extremely attractive. And it's not just because it's my personal design, but because the idea really works. You just shaded every level exactly to the sun pattern that it's passing throughout the day. So you made the building look good, and at the same time, you did it at the cost of decreasing electricity. So you're able to adaptively reuse this building and moving it from being perceived as an office building to making it this sexy hotel landmark without paying money out of pocket. But not only that, now your NOI is going to increase to about a third more because your occupancy is going to be much higher.
People want to rent this place out more. Exactly. And you're utilizing the building a lot better use. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the kind of architecture that we deliver, right? And the vast majority of projects that we work on are JVs. Obviously, we started taking on clients actually over the last 2 years. So last year was our first year, to be honest. So outside of that, it was usually just by word of mouth. We weren't taking on clients in any form really, unless I knew you and I wanted to do that project with you for like, maybe a JV prospect in a later stage.
Would you buy it? You would buy it together with the owners, or they would own it already and then you would just come on as a equity owner? What would you do?
It depends on the project, right? Because there's a very wide range. So if it's like a building as big as this one, obviously I'm not a billionaire, so I'm not, financing a $300 million acquisition in LA. So my percentage on something like that would be very low compared to my percentage on, a single family home, right? So it depends what kind of project we're looking at, but there are industry standards for all this stuff. So it's not like it's very hard to look up. If you just look up what a development deal looks like and what the general structure is, we're usually within that general structure for larger buildings. And again, within the same structure for smaller buildings. And our advantage is we know how to create money out of design and not just use it to use it.
Yeah. It's interesting how you didn't even need to take on clients, and you have a big team, guys. It's like, if you guys don't know, obviously he's not doing this by himself. I mean, you have a pretty massive team, to figure out the pattern of the sun and to design all that. That's a lot of research and a lot of behind the scenes that people are you're kind of passing over, but it's a lot of figuring out the efficiencies of windows and glass, and a lot going on behind all that.
It's a lot of technical stuff for sure. Yeah, we do have a big team, and that's actually the realization that made me realize that actually, as a matter of fact, since I built out this entire architecture practice that I use for our own projects, maybe I should leverage this machine that I've built, right, and sell that service to others. And that's why we started selling that service this last year. And just in this last year, we've been able to break, 7-figure in sales from this product that we already had but never sold, just by taking on what was it, 2 projects. So we didn't really try to sell ourselves. We didn't we just basically put up a website saying that we have this business. And that was organically what happened out of it.
You don't really have to sell yourself, because the clientele you're dealing with, they like right away. I caught it. Like, if I had a building right now, I caught it. Like, so those clientels catch it. They should, you can see that value. I can see that value. If I had a huge building, I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. But it's a common misconception though that we can only work on buildings that have such a high arbitrage. Like, even in homes, right? The first project that we got into in LA is actually somewhere behind me here at the very top of the hill. It's on Appian Way. It's a project that we're actually still in, and it's been our biggest learning challenge. And that property, we got it for $780,000, so it was really cheap for the land, right? It has jetliner views, and the cost of construction would be something about $2.5 million or so.
That's a beautiful house,
right? And the sale price, the comp to it, was a 9.9, right? So it was a no-brainer for me. I was like, okay, we're gonna have to do this, right? The learning experience was the city of West Hollywood almost doesn't want you to build there, so it makes your life a living hell trying to permit it. Right?
So it takes those struggles.
So it takes a solid 5 years and a gut of steel, right? To take punch after punch and know that it is your legal right, that you are an engineer and you're aware of what you're doing, and you just keep going to bat for it, right? But that kind of project, right, still generates significant upside on design, right? That same home you wouldn't be able to sell for, a $10 million valuation just because you put in these numbers into it, right? Like, it probably sell for something close to like a 5 million, but to get that extra, 4 and a bit,
You need that design aspect. Yeah. You need that.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah.
you need the edge factor, right?
Yeah.
Because you've moved from being all about space, like how much price per square foot that you're selling a customer. Now you're selling a different customer that's like, okay,
Yeah.
it's not just design, like my price per square foot. It's like, what is my quality of life? And how does this communicate me as a person, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a ton of those people that can't afford to wait, 4 or 5 years in the case of like West Hollywood to be able to build, right? Because they'll go through the same thing. But life is short, right? And how many 5-year increments do we have before we don't want to do it anymore, right?
Yeah.
In professional career.
After I met you last time, you got me thinking about some high-end stuff. I actually came home from Vegas and I put in an offer for this 7.2 million. I think I messaged you. I was so close to getting. I was gonna bring you on actually. I was gonna fly you over here and tell you part me on this thing because it was like a 14 million evaluation, and I never did get it. But I valued you can make a shit ton in some of these high-end beautiful
absolutely.
builds if you do it right. If you do it right, that not just slap some paint on it, but you have to kind of pull out all stops.
Absolutely. You're right. And for that client base, again, they're very savvy, right? They've seen everything, right? Like when you're buying homes at those valuations, you've seen a thing or two in life, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So being able to really deliver from their perspective, what is luxury is very different to what my perspective, my own personal perspective on what would be luxurious for my own personal home.
How do you struggle with that? Because you're designing now, especially on that deal, you design on your perspective, but you want to sell to the masses. Like for example, 5, 6 years ago, I was doing accent walls on all my flips. That was not a common thing, and people kind of were turned off on some of that thing. Now it's an everyday thing, an accent wall. But when you're designing, how do you design? There's a fine line, right? You want it to appeal to the masses, but you don't want to just appeal to one person, because when you're selling a house, you want to, everyone to potentially bid up on it and sell.
Absolutely. So you're touching on a really important point for designers in general, right? Like you mentioned earlier, like, oh man, this guy has great style, right? But I'm pretty sure you wouldn't feel comfortable, even though you see what I'm wearing, right? Or how I've put it together, and you could literally replicate it, right? You could be like, okay, he's wearing a gray hat, pink hair, his jersey's whatever color, right? And you could replicate it, and you would think that you'd feel the same. But the reality is you most likely won't feel comfortable, right? The reason is it's not an authentic expression of what you like. If it was, do it, right? So as a designer, you need to understand two things, right? And that's really what differentiates a really successful designer, just from a design aspect, right? Finances aside. What is understanding what is current, what people want now, and what people are going to understand and want shortly in the future, right?
That's the second one is a hard one. That second one's a hard one, I think.
But you think it's hard because you're not in the space. But I'll give you an example of your knowledge versus a novice's knowledge in real estate, right? For example, today that in your Hawaii market, you should be avoiding purchases of, X, Y, Z, right? Because that they're, a little bit more at risk or something to that end. And maybe your real estate strategy today is different than your real estate strategy last year, same time last year, right? So you are predicting two things, right? One, what's the current pulse of the market? And you're aware of what that pulse is. And you're also predicting what the market looks like shortly within 3, 6 year, 2 years, right? You're constantly predicting those different things. And you have your pulse on the market.
Because you're doing it.
Exact same thing. And it might actually be harder when you're talking about real estate, because at the end of the day, real estate is about numbers. So being able to predict the numbers and all the variable pieces to it is much harder than being able to predict color trends or design trends or any of that, because it's actually very close and we're only ever evolving so slightly.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, I was just say 100%. You don't really jump in designs like yellow to a blue era, or we were in the grays. Now we went into like a softer white. Like it wasn't like, and it was
Exactly.
earthy before that. So it's like
Exactly.
a little
Exactly.
gradual.
And we're going to start to pick up a little bit more color. And I'm telling
Yeah,
you this because, I've been wearing color
yeah.
because we are about to pick up color.
I'm
Like,
over the whites, by the way. I don't
yeah.
I don't like the
So
whites.
we're going to pick up a little bit more color and we're going to get and we're going to start getting a little bit more saturated
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah.
But,
I tell you a funny thing. So when I was flipping like 5, 6 years ago, the realtors would paint the interior houses white because the realtor didn't like want to make any like rash decisions. When white was safe, so we used to tease the house. It was realtor white. It was the color, and now to this day, now that whites are really popular, I'm like, still, I used to tease it, and now I can't get out of
no, I
the
completely understand. And it's probably because of, realtors painting more homes white because it was just a blank canvas.
yeah.
It made it the standard for what people want, right?
That's what they're
Uh,
seeing. Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
yeah.
Tell me more about the colors because I want to know what's because I want to
Oh,
start getting colors.
I think we're going to start seeing a little bit more color in everything because people are really over, the whites, the grays, the burnt tones. They're very current, but once anything is current, it's already old.
Mm,
That's the key to anything, right?
yeah,
And it's the key even to real estate, right? If everyone's talking about real estate, then you're at the top or you're at the bottom. You're either, you know, but
yeah,
no one really talks about it when it's in motion, right? So on an uptrend, once people start talking about real estate and talking about real estate investing, that's when okay, well now everyone's going to be a real estate investor. This is
yeah,
the top of the market, right?
yeah,
And then once people start talking in the inverse, like, oh my God, it's like we're all going to die. Real estate's gone. The way that people are today, right? Then you're pretty much near the bottom, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah, exactly.
once it becomes like common knowledge to everyone, then everyone does the same thing, right? So now that everyone's doing, the beiges and the kind of soft tones of white and the earth tones,
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be an oversaturation of that, right? Just because everyone's committed to it. So the next thing is to add some color to those same tones. So
Mm-hmm.
like, if it's like a washed white, right? Like you do like a washed blue.
Mm,
So it starts to look like still earthy blue, but it's a slow transition. Or like adding like reds and magentas to that similar sort of cool palette. People
mm,
usually gravitate towards cool before they do warm tones. And then that's going to add more saturation, and then we're going to start to see the warm tones come
come on.
on the next cycle of like summers and things to that end. And you
Mm-hmm.
start seeing those a lot more implemented in like beach homes and
Mm-hmm.
places like Hawaii, where people will pick up a lot more of the vernacular architecture and want a lot more of that than the very glitzy glam sort of looks that we've been getting over the last, call it, 5 to 10 years.
I love it. I actually love listening to you about this because I actually secretly love designing. As a flipper, that was always for me the funnest part of the house was always designing the home. Picking out
Yeah.
the colors, layouts, and accents, and trying to get it all to play together. I can see you as we're sitting here talking about. You see it all in your head. Those colors, those feelings. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people actually don't see that or feel that. My wife's a great example. My wife has to like go put it, paint it in the wall, and see it and feel it, but. You already know what in your head what's something. I mean, you can guarantee walk a house and you would know what the here and there would go without even literally seeing on the walls, and that's a
Yeah.
skill that I think not much people have actually. That
Yeah.
design skill,
No,
it's often it's in your head. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Like when you say that, I could see it. I could see it and feel it. Like I could quite literally imagine the texture of
hmm
of these materials. So no, you're absolutely right. It's something that comes over time.
yeah. I have it too, but I noticed that you did grow it and build, but it was something it's in you that came from
Yeah,
somewhere, but.
And the more you exercise it, the better you get at it. Like that's just fundamentally it. And I think people are very scared.
I bet you right now, a house that you're talking about at the hill, you can see that whole house, and you can walk that house in your head.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And know where this wall and that wall, and
absolutely
describe that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't think much people have that skill set.
It exists in 3D in my mind.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. And I never actually realized that a lot of people might not have that. I just assumed that it's just part of the built-in, it's software, the operating system.
I don't think so. And you can walk that house one time, and that's all you would need. I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We actually, speaking of this, we actually just signed on a new client. I'm very excited for this project. It's not the biggest project. It's just 800 square feet. But this person has a really big budget for an 800 square foot home. And the reason why he won me over is what he wants to do, right? So he's leaving Earth, him and his wife, later on. And they're going to Mars. So they wanted a home that would, one, be a monument to, their celebration of humanity once they're gone, because obviously they're not going to be coming back. So it's like a monument to them. And at the same time, it's a transitional space for them to get used to what they're going to be experiencing on Mars.
Up in Mars, yeah.
Correct.
That'd be a really cool design. Like you can really
and
do something.
And it happens to be that the plot of land that they've picked is in, a hurricane zone on hurricane path, right? Like on Hurricane Avenue. So I started to think to myself, how can I honor these people? How can I help them, on this journey that they're going through? And what would be the best home for them, right? So I thought about it. I was like, well, this home to them is their new refuge from everything, the same way it's going to be on Mars. And in Mars, they have to literally be in their home, and that's it. There's no refuge outside of whatever their home is. So I started to think, their home needs to be flood proof. It needs to be hurricane proof. It needs to withstand winds of up to 140 miles per hour. What if something impacts the home? How can we make it look good and also do all those things? What we ended up designing for him is a building that looks like, the skin of it looks like an armadillo. And it basically just opens up in certain areas to allow for light. But on the inside, it's a big donut. And in the center of it is their oasis, right? This is their only outdoor space, which I imagine would also be something similar to what they would have in their home. Yeah, it's right. The only space that they could be in that would be kind of like a biosphere, right? And we designed that home for them, and now we're kind of getting into the construction document stage and finding our suppliers and things like that. So, their home is something that I saw immediately as they were describing this thing. And as you're talking to me about a problem, I could solve that problem visually in my mind. And I think that's something that I didn't realize everyone can do.
Yeah, no, it's an art form, it's in your head. It's I don't know what it is, but it's amazing. It's amazing the skill set to have. I mean, obviously it helps in what you do. I'm curious to see what that house looks like too when you finish designing that.
Yeah, we could absolutely share some preliminary. We call them clay models. So before we start rendering everything,
you got to post more on your Instagram, man. I see some of your stuff, but
we post products once they've gone through their life cycle. So we don't like showcasing people's work prior to them being done with it, because there's a certain pride in showing off your design or your home that they have, and we don't want to take that away from them. So we wait until they've shared it with everyone, and then we share it.
Yeah, I was cool. When I was hanging out with you, you're sitting there showing me on your phone all the different work you've done, and I can't even express these people how this is crazy beyond beautiful.
Thank you.
This is not like a normal design homeowner where you do it an extra add-on of an awning here. You guys, this is beyond creativity of circles and just he's talking about building it right now. I don't even know how you build some of this stuff with domes and structures and roundness. that's very hard to do in building. The cylinder stuff of building, it takes a lot of work to do on just an arched walkway. It's a lot of work. So, the building is not an easy feat but yeah. So you do some interesting stuff with real estate and financing deals. And how were you doing before? So you were JVing and doing stuff together. Were you buying the properties in a partnership and stuff like that, or how were you structuring? So I know every deal is different, but how were you?
So it kind of started off when we had the least amount of leverage, right? We started off saying, okay, we're going to partner in 50-50, right? So you're going to put up 50% of the funds and do the commercial loans or any loans that are required, and we'll put up 50%, the other 50% of funds required, any gap funding, right?
Yeah, the gap.
For this particular project, we had to take down land all cash, right? So we took down land cash. It was a 50-50 split. It was something like $600,000 or so. Sorry, 780 to take down the land, and then any gap funding we were going to cover equal parts, right? Mm-hmm. Me and my business partner at the time. And then we kind of went through all that, and we did all the development at cost. So, we're not charging anything at all other than whatever cost is being passed to us. We just split with our partner.
Yeah.
So that's like how we got into it, right? We had to really put a lot of sweat equity into it. We had to put a lot of money into it so we'd be able to get that first deal, right?
Yeah.
But as our business grew, our positioning completely changed. So
for that one partner you were talking about earlier that you kind of splitted ways?
So we haven't split ways. But
that was another thing. That was a long time ago. You did
correct.
Another partner.
Yeah. But so what ends up happening is that for that same deal today, right? And we're talking about like single family home type deals, right? Yeah. We basically take 50% of the profits, and we put in, something extremely de minimis. So for I think for some of our products in Nashville, we were in for under 10% of the entire cost of gap, and then we get 50% of the returns, and that's its own deals. And then if you look at much bigger deals, and all those are developments, by the way. So all of this stuff,
ground ups. And they're built to sell too. You'd have to be selling these.
Correct. Or if something exists, we're knocking the whole thing down and we're coming up with something new, right? So so there's a lot of meat on the bone for developments, and I'm just prefacing this for our audience, because they might be thinking 50%, that's a huge chunk. But it's 50% of profits, and then those profits aren't realized unless we're on board, right? The exponential growth we actually add is a lot more than the 50% that we end up getting. And then on much bigger deals, our percentage is much smaller. So it's anywhere between, for towers like this, if we were to be the developer on it, which we're not actually the developer on it, as of right now, we're the architects on it. If we were to be the developers on it, we would get something like 4.5 to 6% of the equity that we create in the project, right? So whatever that equity is, and then obviously all our architecture fees are paid, and all the services are paid, and everything like that.
I like that model. I think that's a great model where you're taking equity instead, because in the long term of it all, your money, you're way ahead. Yeah,
exactly. And the design part of it keeps the lights on, and it keeps the bills going and the cash flow. Then the equity position for us really is how we grow. We want to get into business with people that we want to help grow their business, right? And if we help them grow that business, then
it's a win-win.
Yeah, that we deserve a part of that equity, right? So we take that, and that's our piggy bank, right? That's how our exponential growth happens. It's not through selling more design, or at least for my practice, that wasn't what I intended out to do. What I intended out to do is generate value for my business partners, and then in that value that I generate to them, we could choose whichever the exit strategy is. My preferred mode is to have more equity as things grow, but sometimes it doesn't make sense, and you just have to take the cash out of it and move on to the next thing.
You just got my head spinning, man, over here. I'm thinking of projects I'm going to partner with. Hey, guys, 50-50 partner to do these kind of deals. It's crazy. And honestly, it's not as much to the table as it may seem. You're not portrayed. The gap funds is literally, that's the hardest part of it all. So
Yeah,
to
it really
offset, to somebody that can raise gap funds, to do these kind of deals. So what, you're giving up a lot more, but it just allows you to do a lot together. And that's how I partner
yeah,
and do
and
things all the
yeah, and
time.
what ends up happening with partnerships like this, and once you get like the right partnership, right?
Mhm.
If you think about the big names in real estate, they're either doing something extremely boring and extremely repetitive, and their margins are very small, and they're doing it in volume, right? Or they're like the related groups or the Chevaux of the world, right? And what they're good at is doing these two things. They're really good at real estate to start off with, right? So they know how to acquire the right deal in the right location, be able to fund it, be able to like figure all that out. And then on the other end, they have the prowess and the know-how to put products in the market that are the best in their class, right? So you know that Cheval is going to deliver the next best hotel, right? Related Group is going to deliver the best next condo development in Miami. Like, you don't doubt it. You just know that this is what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Toll Brothers is going to deliver the next, best, reputable home in America, right? In mass market.
They built a reputation. Yeah.
So exactly. They've built that reputation, and that reputation becomes like wildfire, because it just goes from being able to just look for the deal, acquire the deal, just sell the deal, and it doesn't create that knowledge around your brand, right? Like, you haven't really identified yourself from the next developer or seller or wholesaler, right? Like, it's a set here. It doesn't matter. At that point, you're just competing on price points, right?
Yeah.
But once you get into that niche of, no, we create experiences, we create things that generate more income, we're creating the best in real estate, then you start spreading like wildfire. And then people want to put your name on their buildings. So, hypothetically speaking, it's the Indar Group, right? And Indar Group gets known for having like a certain style to itself. That's how you end up with your name, like Trump, right? Like, Trump leases out his name to other countries in different locations.
Beautiful style. Yeah.
Exactly, because they expect his things to be gold and marble, and they know what they're getting with that, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same idea. Related does the same. Every single developer that's extremely successful, they carve that niche for themselves, and they get that client following, and that following generates exponential growth for them in markets outside of their own.
I would say that's a hard jump, because now I'm thinking about it in my head. Yes, I actually love to create my own. Everything I do, I always have something originality, so people remember it's my design, my build. But taking a jump to that higher end, because we're always battling. It's like a love-hate business. We have a budget to stick to, but we want this high-end feel to create that really great feeling. It's a love-hate, like when I do a flip, I want to put every millions of dollars and do everything perfectly. But we have this budget, it's like it's a dance, sometimes.
It's a different mindset, because you're trying to sell to the whole market, right? You're trying to be like, okay, I want to be in the middle of the stack, right? But what if your target was like, okay, I'm going to sell this home to Zuckerberg or Mark Cuban or right? And they all need homes in Hawaii, right?
Yeah,
like
they have,
they have or need or want, right? Like, I'm not saying you define yourself like to 10 clients, right? But the point that I'm making it here is, you're just creating a different strategy for a different buyer, right? And in that range, there's a lot of money to be made, because it's an underserved market. Fundamentally, it's like the very top is actually underserved compared to like the very bottom, which is overserved.
That's interesting. There are less, fewer buying pool and so forth. We have a 4.2 on the market right now, actually. And I noticed after about $1.5 million, it's a different buying pool just in general. After $1.5 million, now it's more that person's successful. So they're going to look for the finer details. Then they're going to look for that higher end touch, and they're going to ask more questions, and you got to kind of have a great product to sell in that range.
Absolutely. And especially in a market like yours where people value quality. Like, in certain markets, people don't really value quality, but I feel the Hawaii market
I think more in your market actually in LA because you have more competition. You got
that's
like
that's
hundreds
that's
of
true.
homes and hundreds of
That's
great
true.
builders.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. I think
Yeah.
LA is at the very top with New
Yeah.
York, but I also think Hawaii is in a similar boat because when people go to Hawaii, they're expecting an experience, right?
Mhm.
They're not expecting to be like in their, less than exciting New York condo, right?
Yeah. I know. I've been wanting to do even more and more, like steam rooms in our bathrooms and have some kind of diffusers going throughout houses. It's just create that experience.
Yeah.
So when you walk into a house, you have that smell and feelings, and definitely you need to create that experience.
Absolutely.
That's funny. But man, I would love to do. I would love to. I'm thinking of multifamily. I'm trying to find a. I want to find a multifamily or a commercial space and figure out how we can value add. This essentially what we're talking about here. How to
I
value
would
add it.
love,
And
yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to work with you on something. Let's make it happen.
that'd be just sticking in my head, man. Because right now you can find some really good deals. But
Yeah.
let's we didn't get to talk on. Let's talk about your crypto and that whole field and that whole world. Uh, you were when we first talked. I think you were just kind of dabbling in it. Actually, just started. This was 3 years ago, and now I mean, you guys are beasts. You guys sold it was the largest ever first day sale of any over CryptoPunk and over all the other ones. You're
So it's close. We were the number one on OpenSea for that period of time that we were number one. So we were outperforming, projects like CryptoPunks, to your point, and even the Bored Apes. Not the Bored Apes, the Mutant Apes. The Bored Apes were maybe still ahead of us, but at some point, no, we ended up being the number one. So even above Bored Apes, right? So yes, we've had our fair share of success, and we're extremely excited for what we've built. And yeah, fundamentally, what we are building is a community of real estate investors, and buying into our membership into this community is an extremely low barrier to entry, right? When we were first starting it, it was like $500, and you own your membership for a lifetime, right? So. Once you're in the group, and then now you have access to all these individuals, and everyone does business together, right? Similar to the way that we are about to do business together, just because of this podcast, right? Like we talked about it, and you're like, wait, there's an opportunity here. Maybe we should do something.
Yeah.
And now imagine those same interactions, but hundreds of them on a daily basis, right? So within our boardroom community, we've had several multi-million-dollar deals happen over the course of like the last 4 or 5 months. Between other deal makers, right? Like just by being in the same room, several development projects are underway. There's one in North Carolina, a lakefront property, 405 acres. There's another one that's a 320 unit apartment building that's coming up in Georgia with another group from that same boardroom. And the boardroom is only 70 individuals, right? Not the entire group of Tykes. So, for me, if I had the opportunity to get into a community of real estate professionals 12 years ago, instead of having to do, a ton of architectural engineering and a ton of VC work just to niche my path into real estate, I would have definitely preferred to do that than, spend all that time that I've had to spend to get to.
But I think maybe not, because I think now you evaluate equity a lot more. I think for me when I was younger, I wanted the dollars. You want to make but now equity is way more cooler. To have the cash flow. It's
the cash burns. Equity doesn't burn.
Equity what passes on to your family, generational. Yeah,
absolutely. So that's what we fundamentally built, right? And around that, our mission is to create all the services that that community needs, right? So now we're seeing the inception point of the things that the community is doing organically, right? So if me and you are transacting on a deal and we want to syndicate it together, well, wouldn't it be cool if our platform could do that for you, could service that interaction instead of the two of you trying to like find your own attorneys and do your paperwork and like all that? What if it was baked in on the platform? Okay, the two of you agree, this is the kind of parameters that you're doing. You click a few things and all of a sudden there's a syndication, that's coming out the other end, and you could raise capital within the community on that project, right? So certain ideas like that, and I'm not saying this is what we'll be delivering, but I'm saying there's a lot of value in seeing what interactions are happening amongst our investor base or our community base, and how those investors are transacting with one another and building the services to facilitate their interactions within the platform, right? And that alone becomes a business that's saleable to, the Microsofts of the world and the like, right? Because you've essentially built something similar to Salesforce, right? Something they can sell to every real estate business or everyone that wants to transact in real estate. And we've proven the model by having the community do it and transact on it and building in real time and getting that feedback organically as we build these services.
That's amazing. So you're building a company. It's in a sense,
correct,
internal crypto company. Lack of a better explanation.
So it's kind of interesting how we define our company, because our company is actually a tech company. It only leverages, new technology. It happens to leverage NFTs as part of the technology, right? And we need to sell you your membership as an NFT, right? But the services that get provided around it is no different than any other business that me and Ryan have built. There's normal businesses, normal people at their desks servicing our community base, right? So it is obviously a Web3 project, but only to the extent that it services the community, not because we're Web3 first. We're community first and technology second, right? And
technology is how you get into it, basically. You're just closing the door. Yeah.
And we're going to continue to evolve as technology evolves. So today we're Web3. Well, guess what? If there's a Web4, we're going to be in Web4, right? We're going to be we're just a tech company that's at the forefront of technology for real estate investors.
That's amazing. It's amazing you guys got in and started it, not knowing where it was going to go. Obviously it's an industry that's still brand new. We don't know essentially the security of the whole industry compared to like real estate, where we
So unlike everyone else and this is a good point, thank you for actually pointing it out. Unlike everyone else that did a project in the Web3 space or the NFT space, where it was like, who's left holding the bag, game of who's left holding the bag. Our project and our entire company is not based on making anyone money. It's based on giving people the services to make more money and the connections to make more money. But it's on those individuals to make use of those connections, right? It's similar to what you said, right? Like, it's how do you get in front of the right people so that you end up with the best chances, right? You might, if you were a Tyke, you might have, a young gun that has a deal in Hawaii that he wouldn't have been able to sell otherwise without having access to you through that community, sends it to you, and you're like, okay, this has some meat on it, and you give him some cash for it, and you move on, right?
Yeah.
So that core is really important. We weren't really giving anyone anything for free. Everyone has to work for it, but we're giving everyone the services and the access they need to be as successful as they can be.
How do you think, I've been thinking about how could that industry, Web3 or NFTs, figure out how to really own real estate and sell it? Because the only one problem I see with all of it is, so you tie an NFT, to a house, a valuation, you're based upon Ethereum per se. So if Ethereum moves, now your valuation of that house can also move besides the housing market. And that was the one dilemma I see with the whole attaching, an NFT to a house.
So what you're thinking of is like how dynamic is the pricing of this product, right? Like if you know your home is worth $1 million for simplicity's sake, right?
Yeah.
It's worth $1 million. It's going nowhere, right? Unless the market moves, then that $1 million is 800 or 900 or whatever it is, or the other way around, and it goes up, right?
Yeah.
There's that fluctuation. But there's also the price arbitrage that's always happening between the dollar to the cryptocurrency, right?
Yeah. Dollar is stable, doesn't move as much as compared to.
Correct. But that's the same thing that's happening between the dollar and the euro, or the dollar and the yen, or the dollar and any other currency, right? It's always moving. So, if you list your home in the US and it's $1 million and the euro crashes, then, the home that could have bought for 800,000 euros, your home would have been, someone could have been able to buy it for 800,000 euros at some point. Now they have to pay €1 million for. That's their problem. The price of your home hasn't changed. It's still the same valuation. Where it's interesting, and it's true to what you're saying, is if you're doing multifamily, right? And not all multifamily is the same. We assume that the valuations are what they are, but they're very dynamic. If you really think about it, it's based on how much rent roll you're bringing in at any given moment in time, right? So the snapshots that we take when we refi are only accurate within that snapshot of that refi, right? And things can be fluctuating up and down during that time, right? And sometimes you go out of pocket, sometimes you don't. And there's a fluctuating valuation for this property based on the rent roll that you're getting. What ends up happening is if you have properties like that are being paid actively on the blockchain, then you have spot price analysis of the valuation of that property throughout any moment in time, because it shows you, everyone's rent roll and what's your actual net operating income in any given moment in time, right? Because all expenses it's like having a spreadsheet that's always open to everyone. It's always documenting every single movement, right?
Yeah, as it changes and you can see.
Correct. So that's extremely useful for people like you and me, right? If we have a good track record and we show that our properties are consistent, it's very different to investors and lenders and everyone than a property that's, not as well managed, right? And it, it's ups and it's ebbs and it flows, and it is what it is, right? Versus a property that's mismanaged, right? And all that transparency, especially to investors, I think appreciates the value of good properties and good developments against those worse ones, and creates such an amazing amount of visibility that the winners will win more, and the losers are going to either have to pick their game up, or they're going to basically be acquired by one of these winners that knows how to run a business.
That's interesting to see. But you don't think the fluctuation of Ethereum?
No, because what ends up happening is, like, if I've listed a property for like $1 million, right? So if Ethereum was $2,000, $10,000 at some point, right? Let's just make it crazy, right? $10,000 at some point. Then you're going to need 1,000 Ethereum, right? Versus if it crashes and it becomes worth $1,000, then you need 10,000 Ethereum. It doesn't change. Like, you'll just have to pay more for it, right? Like, the value is pegged to the dollar, so you just choose however much amount of dollars you want to sell it for, and then whatever other currency you're selling or buying for, you'll just have to do the exchange rate on that.
So you could still value it with a dollar.
Absolutely.
As a dollar.
Yeah,
that makes more sense.
It's like it's valued at $1 million, and that's what we're going to sell it for. Do you have enough Ethereum for it in that moment in time? If it's yes, then we have a sale. No, then
If you can peg it to the dollar, then that makes, because the dollar doesn't move too much in valuation.
That's what I'm looking for. Some kind of. No, it's always pegged to the dollar. Now, it makes that buying pool either rich or poor, right? That's the difference. Like, if all of a sudden you go from having $1 million in Ethereum to having like a few $100,000 worth in Ethereum, you're not going to magically make Ethereum in between, right? Like, what you have is what you have. That's so your buyer pool shrinks, obviously, but it doesn't really affect you otherwise. It's not like you're going to have to sell for a lesser amount of US dollars. You just sell it on the normal market.
You couldn't take it off. Could you take a house off and put it into a full? Just thinking how you could do it. Put it into
absolutely.
NFT.
it doesn't matter that it's an NFT or not. Like the part, I think this part around NFTs and transacting homes in a non-fungible token is an opportunity. I think we just need to think of it differently. I think we need to think of it as digital contracts. So like in the future, are we going to transact on homes in digital contracts? Yeah, because right now we kind of already do. You DocuSign, some of your deals, and sometimes you ink them, sometimes you don't. Like it depends who you're working with, but a lot of time it's fine. You DocuSign and you've bought a home. It's done, right?
Yeah.
So if that form becomes digitized, right, and there's a place for you to be able to track it very transparently, then how is that really that different from anything else? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's true.
Like we're already there. Like we're already doing those motions. The difference is it's not backed by technology. Like there's an actual human, right? Like that's involved in doing all those things. But if it were backed by technology and it's just transactional, the way you interact with your bank, every time you interact with your bank account, you're not interacting with a human. It's just technology, right?
And it's all tracked.
Yeah, and you're moving millions of dollars around, right? Like in signing for millions and being deployed more millions, right? But there are no humans involved, and we've become so accustomed to it. We don't really think about how dangerous it is. But wire fraud exists, and all these other things that are horrible do exist, right? But we transact with it and with the technology so often on a daily basis that it's become like second nature. And that's about to happen in real estate too, because it's a waste of time. Like all the fluff that's happening in the middle could be software, right?
Yeah, I don't like to be at a bank that I have to go in and do wires to. Or my bank, and I can do it on my computer. Yeah,
exactly. You're like, come on, we've been doing this for you're wasting my time here, right? So
I mean, then talking about it, the checks back in the day, that's how my parents, our parents used to pay things with checks,
absolutely,
and all that kind
absolutely, and all the signature didn't match. You were missing the it's just business efficiency, and I think we're almost there for real estate. So the whole transacting on real estate digitally, I think we're about to be there, right? It's just as soon as like the government gets behind it and we get like a registrar of sorts that has everyone's home and everyone's property, and it's all kept away and you could see it and know who owns what when, then it'll make it so much easier. There are lots of things that are going to go away, title and title insurance, and because you're not going to need it fundamentally.
It's clear.
The government is backing that this person owns this thing, you're transacting on it, and it just happens, and it's all like, okay, it moved from this person's account to this person's account
digitally.
It's not that hard. We're just making it hard.
If you guys are listening out there, and just Google some of the words or lingos. Actually, I was talking about when I started real estate. I remember real estate was its own language, its own little world, and talking about some of the different terms of it all. But it's the only way to learn is to do it. But go ahead.
To your following, we keep talking about like my work, and we never mentioned what the work is or where they can find it. So if for everyone that's following Endar's podcast, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for hearing me out. And if you want to see any of our work, it's at www.samahastudios.com. That's my last name, studios.com. And for my Instagram, that's last_citizen on Instagram. And I actually don't know what my Twitter is, but it might be on my Instagram or on my website.
Last Citizen. Go to Last Citizen, guys. Follow him for sure. You'll see a lot of his cool work and stuff and all that. And we'll post the links this will be YouTube as well, and we'll post the links. So you guys got to follow some of his stuff and go on to his website and see what you can do. And you've been an open book, actually. Honestly, I've talked with you before, and I don't know, maybe it was I was on your level and maybe you're open to me, but when we sat down and talked, you're an open book, and it's pretty amazing, some of the designs, and I can't express enough the creativity that you have in designing. It is a sculpture, honestly. Like, you're turning a building into a sculpture. That's probably the best way to explain it, what you're doing with a square, big rectangle building. You're turning into this massive sculpture, taking something boring and my wheels are spinning, man, about some properties and some deals that we can
Let's make it happen, man.
make it more efficient. And
Yeah, we're
appreciate
working. We're working now with someone that I met through a friend of mine on social media, and he's converting another office building in San Juan from an office building into a hotel. And so that's another really interesting opportunity. I think adaptive reuse in this coming market is going to be great. There are certain uses that are really struggling, and with a further market slump, a lot of these places are not going to operate very well. So, you know, for you or your following, for anyone that's looking at adaptive reuse space, and if they don't know what that is, you should look it up. It's basically when you take a space that is not performing as good as it can be and giving it new life by giving it a different function. There's a lot of good money to be had there, especially with the office space. It's struggling and it continues to struggle.
We're building out a co-working space right now. So you're utilizing a space that was an office space where you only have a set dollar amount per square foot. With co-working, we're building a 6,000 square co-working space. Now you can utilize it, dollar for dollar at a square footage is so much more. Yeah. I think with hotels is a similar thing where you can now, instead of a monthly, tenant, now you can really generate more income when with hotels and so forth. And there's some nice.
So the way we saw it is for hotels. There's been a bent up stress, right? People have been wanting to go out on vacation just with everything that's been going on in the past few years in the world. So we think hospitality is going to be a little bit on the rise moving forward. And with the big office buildings, it's a big problem because you need large tenants, right? You can't get like a small mom and pop sort of situation in a big office building, right? You need large tenants that are willing to be paying, $30,000, $40,000 in payroll a month, right? So that's not a big buyer pool. So developments like the one you're talking about actually make sense because that buyer pool is shrinking and they're downsizing their offices now. And all those people that are going to be out of a job are probably going to end up in small business, right? And that small business is either going to work from home or they're going to work from a small office, similar to the co-working spaces that you're talking about. So it's definitely a move. It's one that we've considered several times, but being where we are in LA, there's a lot of saturation. There's a lot of WeWorks around, so we didn't want to compete with them. And they have cash to burn, right? So we were like, we don't want to play your dirty game. We're in real estate to make money in real estate, not to flex our muscles.
Yeah. That's cool. I think I've been seeing an uprising. A lot of investors doing boutique hotels and some of this thing, and take advantage of utilizing Airbnbs and all these different platforms to make a hotel succeed as older hotels would not. They're trying to self-manage it themselves. Boutique hotels would self-manage. Yeah. And to utilize spaces now and use Booking.com and HomeAway and all the other places. I have some ideas in mind. Again, the wheels are spinning.
And by the way, this is the next wave. People don't want to be at a Marriott anymore. People don't want to be in a Holiday Inn. It's boring. You don't want to do it. You don't want to vacation there, right?
Yeah.
People are looking for that authentic new experience. They want to feel like they're in your hotel. I know it's crazy as it sounds. They want to be in your hotel. And I'm talking about every single one watching this show. They want to see what your hospitality looks like. And that's the next wave of hospitality for sure. Like without a hint of doubt, it's going to be bigger than Airbnb and smaller than your big box hospitality. Boutique hospitality is going to be on the rise. And those that have strong, good aesthetic and fun things to their concepts.
Uniqueness. Yeah.
That's all everyone wants. No one wants to be in that.
People want that experience. We have this stupid little thing. We have some angel wings in one of our Airbnbs. The angel wings are like taking pictures everywhere. It's on the wall, and they love that uniqueness.
It's the experience. They're looking to be in your space. That's the next wave. People are bored of the Starbucks type home, right? The Starbucks type, like it's just been done. It's so like lame and tasteless. It's not an experience.
Yeah. It's interesting. That's cool, man. But we're just jumping all over this thing. But
let me ask you a question. Is there a project that you're going through right now that maybe I could give you some ideas on?
Well, we're acquiring the shopping center right now, 5.8 million. I think I sent it to you. We're just about to close that. I'm still raising and about to close on that. It's an added value, raise rents kind of project, real straightforward. And then yeah, we got 18 flips going on right now. I have a few that are a few high-end ones that I think I gotta pull out all the stops, especially in this market right now. I think I'm going to kind of pull out all the stops and spend a little more, do more nicer things that I wouldn't normally do. Think what that clientele would hopefully want. More stucco finishes on the exterior and some black sliding windows compared to the white vinyl. I think little things like that go a long way in that high-end feel. It's more harder for us in Hawaii, so that's one thing I struggle with actually is finding materials and make it being ready available, because when we flip a house, we're 3-6 months, maybe 9 months for the high-end stuff, and it takes 6 to 8 weeks for things to even show up here. So it's hard sometimes to make work with what you have in Hawaii. You gotta.
No, I completely understand. That's where doing ground up development could actually be good for markets like that, because if you design something with local resources, you'd be surprised how much better it could be than building with non-native resources. I'll give you a couple of examples that could really help with this. And it doesn't exist unfortunately, in Hawaii, because of, America's influence on Hawaii is so prevalent that it needs to look like the rest of America, right? Where you have very different resources, right? Your resources are a lot more similar to that of like Bali or New Zealand or some of the other tropical Asian markets.
Yeah.
And what they do really well is, because they're not being forced, or not necessarily forced, but they're not having to abide by what's like most convenient. They're using their own rhetoric to create very beautiful architecture. So one of the very interesting projects that I love that exhibits this is the Four Seasons in Ubud in Bali, right? Their architecture looks like it's from there, right? So they have lots of really cool concepts that work in their context, that would work in Hawaii, where you don't have to get those traditional things that people really want in the US, right? Because you're redefining what's that experience. What are you trying to get when you're living in this environment, as opposed to what you imagine every home in America should look like, right?
Yeah.
Leaning on a lot more of the culture and a lot more of like what's actually historically worked and bringing it and creating something new out of it. That's probably where you win the most and spend the least.
Yeah. That's funny you say that, Four Seasons of it. I actually get a lot of inspiration when I go to some of these higher end hotels. I literally take snapshots. I was in Vegas at, I don't know what hotel it was, some nice high end. I was like taking pictures of the bathroom because I get inspiration in them and what they're doing a lot of times. Because I think sometimes it's cool to make a house feel like you're in a hotel. I don't know if that's bad or good, but
it is
that luxury, relaxed feel, So. But I like the Bali style. They're what's the guy's Michael, the hair product guy. He built a house on Big Island, and he brought everything in from Bali, all custom, beautiful Bali style homes, and it's beautiful.
The thing is, it doesn't actually have to be Bali. I was just giving that as an example. I do it completely from and by Hawaii. That would be where it would really shine.
Yeah, that's cool to try and make that uniqueness of it all. But sometimes the older Hawaiian style is kind of older feel. It's not actually. I actually don't like the too much Hawaiian style. It's trying to take that old Hawaiian feel and make it more modern, I guess, is what I'm always.
You haven't seen what we do for Hawaii?
No, I gotta find this big project here. I'm gonna bring you over here, man. Do this, partner with you on a nice.
You'll get it once you see it.
Yeah, there's a 1.6 million house I'm looking at right now, and $5, $6, $7 million neighborhood. So maybe I better go buy that thing and bring it on and do it with you, partner with
Let's
you.
talk. Let's talk.
I just don't know if where, with the market and how it is. So,
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I completely understand.
With those higher end stuff, it's you really gotta be ready.
No,
But,
listen, I've seen it. Like, but when you're doing development, it's a little bit easier, in my opinion, because you do it on fundamental principles. You're not playing arbitrage with the market. So you're looking at much longer time spans, and because you're thinking of it that way and your finances are lined up that way, you're not in that struggle of like, okay, well, my investors are waiting for this money now. Everyone has understanding. Your horizon's 3 years. This is what they're going to get. You use financing only when you need the financing, and it only comes in when things really pick up steam. But while they're not, where it's in a lull, it's just, cash, you're sitting on it, you're expecting it to depreciate at a certain point and then appreciate at another point. Actually, because it's spread out, it takes away a lot of the anxiety that a lot of people feel. And when you really think about those bigger developers, they don't care about where the market is, because they know that whenever they start, they're going to be better out at the end of it, because they can hold through, right? And they're going to generate that value. And that's why they're not stressed. They're not stressed because they are creating value. And if you're creating value, then it doesn't matter if you have the right financial partners. Like, it does obviously matter when the exit is, but it doesn't matter what happens during that pendulum swing, right? Because you're not concerned.
That's so true. Because when you buy a land, you just buy the land. That's all. That's your only cost up front, is buying the land. Then you're not starting work until you permit, it's through and everything. And that could be a year later.
Yeah, a year, 2 years, depending how big the project is. 3 years, and if you buy right, within a range of right, it doesn't matter that it fluctuates 10, 15%. Like, 10, 15% on the land value is nothing compared to just once you have permit, right?
Yeah.
Like, especially in places like Hawaii or LA, or like where it's harder, it's not as easy to build, right? You're always creating value. So because of that, it doesn't actually stress me out as much. But what stresses me out is getting cash in between to keep the lights on for everything else, right? But the projects themselves don't stress me out. It's what's happening meantime is what actually does stress me out.
Yeah, you got to keep cash going for other things, keep the business running, keep the guys paid. Yeah, yeah. It's getting enough of those bigger ones going and rolling that that this
exactly. Exactly. So so the big players time it out so that it's like in 2 year intervals, right? They get huge paydays, and then in between, they basically become so efficient at raising capital, they pay themselves from that capital as well. Right, because there's
acquisition fee. Yeah, most big players take
and a bunch of other things, not just acquisition, right? Like the bigger ones, Related and Stro and all those, they're paying themselves for design, they're paying themselves for management, they're paying themselves for engineering. Like, all those trades start to come in house, and they start to service all those things, right? They're constantly adding value. And that's what puts their lights on, and that's exactly the same model that we employ, more or less. But obviously, we're not as big as they are, and so we cut people much better deals than they would.
Less fees.
No, honestly, the Puerto Rico client of mine, they were charging them $1 million in design fees alone, right? We're not going to charge them $1 million for the redesign of their hotel. We're going to do the same work, even better, because for us, it's a huge thing to get that client on and then be able to perpetuate this soundbite, right? Like, it's not 2, 3 hotels that we've done. No, we've done 5, and we've done in this country.
Just like the client, the building you're in right now. That's
exactly
the first job that you've done for him.
Exactly,
and every other.
And I had to take that first job for less money than the second job, than the third job, right? So to that end, my eyes on the prize, and I know where we're going. We just got to find more great partners that help us create that value for them and for ourselves.
That's amazing. That's cool. There's a guy I like to follow. He's kind of my idol. His name is Barry Schwitzner. He's the owner of Marriott and the Starwood Group. He's kind of the beast. He bird the Cosmopolitan Hotel. he's a beast, and that's the kind of guys you need to start.
Imagine burning the Cosmopolitan.
Yeah, you should probably read some of his stuff. He's my idol in this world, and it's pretty crazy. He does some of this stuff you're talking about in a larger scale, basically.
Of course, it's huge scale. They define scale.
Yeah, they define it. Scale makes the things we do feel like nothing. There's always something bigger, of course.
Yeah.
But right on, man. Thank you so much for. I don't take too much of your time, man. We've been talking for over an hour.
This was so much fun. Please, let's make it happen. I love catching up.
Come to Hawaii. I want you to come to Hawaii. I'm going to take care of you everything. I'll show you and your wife and your kids. Our kids are about the same age, so they would love hanging out. Your kid's 4, I think, right?
She's about to turn 4, yes.
Okay, I think that's close. Yeah. So again, so where can everyone follow you again? One more last time at the plug at the end.
So that's at last_citizen on Instagram, and then our website is Samaha, that's SAMAHA studios.com.
So make sure everyone goes on there and just comment or message, talk some crap if you want. We don't care. We'll love it. We love
enjoy it. Thank you so much.
All the conversations. So, just come talk story, guys. And successful people are open book. I should share that to you guys. Successful people don't feel shy to ask questions, because we were all in your place at one time. So ask questions.
It's all part of the story, man. It's like, we're writing it, and there's so much time we have in our life. There's nothing to carry away from. This is how we got here, and I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I know that I'm doing my best to make it go in the right direction.
Yeah, so true. We were all in your shoes at one point. So, but thank you so much for being on the show and just talking story, and hope everyone got a lot of value out of that. I mean, there's some high level stuff to everyone learn about, but that's what it takes, to be around successful people. You need to learn from them. So, right on.
And it's been a pleasure. Appreciate you,
everybody. Thank you, everyone. Aloha, everybody.